Hey, I'm Baskar and this is Swetha.
Hi.
This video is completely about her. She scored a 780 in the GMAT. It's all about how should one go about if one has that kind of a score in mind, right? 780.
Yes.
It's an atrociously high score.
Yes, it is.
And what is the split?
It's a Q50,
Right.
50 in the quant section and V47.
V47. I never managed that, right? I took the GMAT sometime 3-4 years back. I managed a 36 in the verbal section. That's
See, there is a difference. I sat through your math classes and you're yet to sit through my verbal classes.
Okay. So there's still scope for me.
Yes, there is.
Right. How does one manage to get the 780? What I'm asking is, can someone program work towards a 780? Is it possible?
Yes, it definitely is possible.
It's not genetically coded.
It is not genetically coded. I don't think my dad would score a 780 in the test.
Right. So you can program oneself to do that.
It is definitely possible. When I started preparing, which is like 10 years ago, before I started taking classes, I had zero clue about the quant section.
Right.
And I really did not consider myself strong in the quant section.
Right.
So I started from scratch, worked on everything, did tons and tons of practice, fine-tuned my strategies, and that's what has eventually led to the Q50.
Right.
Even now, just because I'm taking classes for the verbal section, does not mean I can like instantaneously do well in the quant section either.
Correct.
Yes, I can for the verbal part.
Right.
Because that's where I've been focusing my attention.
Correct.
So right before that I took this test,
Right.
I spent a month. Using our material, sitting through your video lessons, and I probably did about 1,000 quant questions practice.
That would easily be about 120 hours of preparation?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And you didn't take it lightly.
I didn't take it lightly. Exactly.
Right. And you didn't say that I'm a verbal tutor. I could get a
so
V47.
I'm just going to go and write the GMAT and
Right. So it can be work.
It is. It's all about how much effort you're investing, and it is definitely not just about having a natural aptitude.
Right. The next question. This obviously is one in most people's mind. Should I have that kind of is a 780 necessary?
Absolutely
That's question
not.
number 1.
Okay.
And is a 780 sufficient? That's question number 2.
Okay. All right. You don't need a 780.
Right.
That's for sure. Right. Even if you're looking at the top B scores, their average GMAT score would be somewhere in the range of 710, 720.
For us Indians, it would be at least 20 points more.
20 points more because we tend to score
competitive
pool of applicants.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And the middle 80% of the class.
Right. Hey, can you explain what that is? I know what it is, but like a lot of people come back to us asking, what is this middle 80%? Can you explain that?
Let's say the class is
10th to the 90th percentile?
Absolutely.
Right. So how does one infer that? If you have a score range, let's say 640 to 720.
Okay. Let's say I have 700 students in class.
Right.
Okay. I'm just going to arrange the scores of everyone in ascending order.
Right.
Leave out the bottom 10%. Leave out the top 10%.
Right.
That's the middle 80% of the scores.
Super.
And that range is what they're basically telling us.
So if a middle 80 upper end is 720, then the 90th percentile is 720.
720.
10% have a score upward.
About 720.
Super. So you guys got an idea about it, right?
Yes.
So you're saying that 780 is not needed?
780 is not needed. Even in the top scores, that range, the middle 80% range, will go to up to like a 750 or a 760.
Right. It's not 780.
It's not 780.
And it doesn't guarantee. You're saying it's not sufficient either.
It's not either because the GMAT is not the only parameter that schools look at.
Right.
Schools like to say that they're taking a holistic approach to giving admissions. Right. For most schools, 15 to 20% weightage is probably what they would assign to your GMAT or your GRE or whatever score that you are submitting.
Right.
That doesn't mean that there is one other component that constitutes the remaining 80% and then one thing is what you need to focus on. It's a bunch of factors that they are going to be looking at. They're going to be looking at...
But the whole point is, she has said all of this, but keep one thing in mind. A bunch of those factors that she had said is all in the past. You can't do a thing about it.
Very true.
She can't change the fact that she is a commerce graduate who scored, how much did you score in college?
Do I have to say that?
Not needed, right. So the whole point is you can't change where you work, how many years of experience, and which company and what roles you have played, whether you played basketball while in school, whether you were a tennis tutor, none of that can be changed. The only thing that you have in hand, which you can do to improve your application, is basically your GMAT score. So don't say that it's only 15%, therefore I can forget it. If the rest of the 85% is something that you can't work on,
True, very true.
Might as well work on the 15% to showcase it.
Absolutely. And the GMAT score is important not just for your admission, it is important for your scholarship decisions. It might even play a role later in your internship recruitment at the schools that you are.
Did you hear that? Can you repeat that?
It is also going to play a role later in the kind of internship opportunities that you get. Because most often than not, the recruitment for the summer internship after the first year of the MBA program happens within your first semester of the program.
Right.
And you don't have a
college
grade or record yet for the companies to use in order to offer you the opportunities.
So they go with GMAT, which is
score.
supposedly universal for everyone, and they base it on that.
Absolutely.
So a good GMAT score could land you in a good summer internship, which if you do well, you could get a good job. So a good GMAT invested right now is going to pave a way for a good job finally.
Absolutely.
Right. Let's come to the brass tacks.
Okay.
Right. What would be the advice for someone? I want to qualify this. To get a great GMAT score. Like, we'll agree on one thing, 780 is great, but let's lower the bar and say what is likely.
740 plus.
Super.
Yes.
Right. How does one go about it?
Okay. Start with knowing where you stand. That's obviously the first step, right? So take a diagnostic test. Understand what the test is about. Understand what's tested in the quant section. What's tested in the
A good place to go
section.
for a diagnostic, is go to mba.com, the official site, right? Not download. These days it's online. You have 2 tests. Pick one test. Take a full length test. Don't do I'll do 10 questions now, 14 later. Do everything in one go.
Absolutely.
And see what scores you get.
Do the IR and the AWA sections as well, even in the diagnostic. Just because you're taking a test doesn't mean...
diagnostic doesn't mean...
Yeah.
AWA is not going to get scored, but write it. You need to know what it means to sit for 3 hours and 7 minutes, right? Most of us have not done that.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. So, and then find a program, a GMAT tutoring course or an online program or an offline classroom program that works for you, right? Do your research. I would definitely recommend our program, but I'm not saying you have to join our program, right? There are a lot of good programs out there. Do your research, find what works for you, find what tutoring methodology is comfortable for you and you're able to understand what's happening. But doing a classroom program or an online course, a structured course, definitely helps.
Search cost is a lot lesser. See, why do you do an MBA? You're trying to optimize the effort to the return ratio, right? You want to work for 8 hours a day and you want to get paid more. That's essentially why an MBA is all for, if I can put it in nutshell, right?
Yes.
So why don't you employ it right away, right? You can do all the research. There's tons of material available on YouTube and internet, which is all absolutely free. By the time you complete the research, by the time the search cost is done, you're probably 7 years older than what you are right now. You want to finish your GMAT probably in 4 months, right? So this cost that you pay to any test preparation company, not just Visaco, is going to go a long way in making it more efficient for you.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah. So identify one.
Yes.
Preferably Visaco.
Absolutely.
Right.
Then take it one topic at a time, get your basics in place. Right. This is where you combine the theoretical learning about what the strategies are. And yes, there are strategies. It's not about answering by instinct. You have formulae and concepts in the quant section. You have equal number of formulae and concepts for the verbal section as well.
She's taking a dig at me because I always believe that language, I said the verbal section is very subjective, and she is one person who said that's not, I have to sit through her class before I believe that.
Right. The thing is, it's not just you.
Right.
And I welcome anyone to sit through my class to find out that it's not the way. The verbal section is structured and you're not answering by instinct. And the best way for you to learn how to master that structure is to do tons of practice, right?
Can you just give an anecdote, an example of a very small concept where you can say it's structured and it's not subjective?
Okay. Inference questions, which you work on in either reading comprehension passages or in critical reasoning, right? A lot of people think that answering an inference question has to come from reading between the lines, right? So people wonder, what if I'm not thinking the way the author is, right? And they look at the answer options and they go, oh, if I knew the answer, I can justify it. Right. But I was thinking differently than the author was, so I couldn't arrive at the answer myself, right? But there are definitive strategies to apply in inference questions.
Right.
And there are things that you can say, this is the kind of answer you're looking for, right? And you don't even need answer options for you to say what the author is actually trying to say there.
Okay.
And there are approaches that you can take there.
Okay.
Which means it's not subjective.
Right. See, I'm going to leave you with a URL which you can see on the right hand side, which has the video where Swetha has done a CR session. It's available on YouTube, right? What she's meaning by this, especially when it comes to CR basics, have a look at it. So that tells you that be it quant, be it verbal, you have to take a structured approach to it. It's not subjective. It's not instinctive. It's not the gut.
Absolutely.
So how many hours do you need?
Yes, you're looking at investing about, I would say around 75 to 80 hours of preparation for the quant section.
Okay.
And another 75 to 80 hours for the verbal section.
In all, that's all that you need.
Initially.
Okay.
For you to start thinking the way you need to.
Okay.
For you to start getting comfortable with these strategies.
Right.
And for you to start implementing them. And
when I say quant, I can tell you that's about 750 questions.
Yes, around similar number of questions for the verbal section as well.
Right. And these are not necessarily the tough one. Don't step into the tough territory right away. Right. Get started with the basics. Understand what LCM is. Not just it's an expansion, it's an acronym for least common multiple. Check out how to take the LCM, when to take the LCM, what does the LCM stand for, and what kind of a word problem will you actually go for an LCM, right? That's a kind of investment I'm talking about in these first 75 hours.
Yes. Similar investment for the verbal section. Right. And analyze your performance in these questions. It's not enough to say A was the right answer, I marked C and I got the answer wrong.
That's a lovely thing that I hear more often. I narrowed it down to A and C. I marked C, but it ended up being A, right?
Right.
50-50. 50-50 is a good biscuit.
I'm good. I eliminated 3 out of the 5 options, right? The thing is, everybody's last 2 options would be different. You would have shortlisted A and C, picked C when the option was right answer is A.
Right.
I would have shortlisted A and D.
Right.
And picked D when the right answer is A.
Correct.
I knew C was wrong when you didn't, which means I understood something, but you missed something. You knew D was wrong. So you found something else, but I missed it, right? So each of us have different weak areas, different areas that we need to work on, different things we identify and miss when we are practicing a question. You need to find what your areas are, what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are.
Right.
So do the analysis. And you would actually, when we say 75, 80 hours of preparation, it wouldn't take 75 hours to just solve these questions. That's including the analysis time. Probably about 50% of the time would be spent on the concepts and on the analysis, more so than just solving these questions.
Quite true. Don't blindly solve questions just for the sake of solving, right? At solving every question, just understand what else can I take away from it, right? Can I look at an answer choice and basically eliminate the odd numbers in this because this has to have an even number? Get those kinds of instincts as you're preparing for it, right?
Absolutely.
Right? As in, like, it's not the number of questions. Of course, you need a minimum number of questions to get to that inflection point. But that doesn't mean that it's just pure numbers. Pure numbers is not going to help.
Yes, it's always about being smart about those questions that you are practicing.
Absolutely. And then once you're done with this, about another 30 hours, 300 plus questions, work on the GMAT level, the tougher ones, the ones that is going to get you past that 700 plus.
Right. And even if you didn't start doing this early, at this stage, start monitoring the time that you are taking for each of the questions.
Right. If you didn't do it in the first 75, in fact, for quant, I would suggest don't even do it in the first 75. Do it during the last 30.
Right.
Pick the tougher questions. By now, your basics are in place. Then start looking at whether you're able to solve this in under 2 minutes.
Right. For the verbal section, I would probably suggest that you progressively start monitoring your time, even during the first 750 questions. Right. If you're reading a passage in like 10 minutes initially and you're not really processing it, you don't have to bring it down to 3 minutes or 4 minutes because that's your target time in the test.
Right.
Bring it down to 8 minutes from 10.
Right.
And then to 7 minutes and then to 5. Gradually get to where you need to be and make sure that you're monitoring and managing your time efficiently. Overnight, if you try to take a test, see where you stand, you might end up finding that you're practicing and answering well, but in the test environment, you have no time to answer the last 10 questions.
Correct. And that's criminal.
Yeah.
And GMAT penalizes you. Right. The whole point is, like, again, one other point when she was at it, right? Mm-hmm. When it comes to the verbal section of the GMAT, right? I've not got a great score, but nevertheless, one thing to keep in mind is that reading comprehension is something which you need to nail.
Yes.
Without nailing GMAT's reading comprehension, you're not going to get a great score. There are a lot of people who say that my reading is poor. If your reading is poor, jolly well improve it. If you're not going to have a handle on your RC, your overall GMAT verbal score, is not going to be high.
Yes. RC is a little more than a third of the total number of questions that you're going to see.
Right.
And critical reasoning questions, even though they're only one paragraph long, are also about reading and processing information. So make sure you inculcate a regular reading habit such that, there are some people who will read and give an information.
Right.
And then if I ask them, what did you just read? They say, you only told me to read. You didn't tell me to understand it. Right?
They never said it is reading passage. They said reading comprehension, right? They wanted you to comprehend.
Yes. Right. So as you read, inculcate the habit of processing and understanding what it is that you are reading.
Right. Even if you randomly read something, let's say from Scientific American or from an economist, right? Close your eyes for 10 seconds. Try and recap what was said, right? This author started the passage this way. This is how he argued, right?
Yes.
Give the 10 seconds every time you have read to recap in your mind what has happened.
Kind of map it out. He started making this point and then moved on to discussing this issue and concluded with this, right?
When do you start your mock test and how many did you actually take?
Well, I took 2.
Two.
So I'm not a very good benchmark of how many mock tests to take.
What would you recommend?
Most people would need 5 to 7 tests, right? 10 years ago, when I was preparing for the CAT, I took 100 mock tests. So that's one extreme and this is another extreme.
Right.
Somewhere in between is where you actually need to be.
Probably about 6 to 8?
6 to 8 is a very good number to have.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And you just take those tests and walk away, or you do something?
Absolutely not. If you're going to analyze your practice, you definitely need to analyze your tests as well, right? And it's not like you do 1 week of, one test a day.
Right.
You give yourself a lot of time in between your tests. Take one test. Once you are answering your questions, I would say take the first mock when your accuracy in answering is around 80-85%. If it's lesser than that, you're still at the practice stage. It does not make sense to take a mock.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. You're essentially wasting a mock.
Yeah. Exactly.
You'll end up with a 550 or a 530 and you're not going to get
And you're going to be disappointed. And that is also going to bring your overall enthusiasm for the GMAT down. Right.
And please do not do any full length mock other than the first diagnostic test till you finish everything. As in, if you just have done CR and not AC, right? And you take a mock, you're always going to be getting things wrong in one section that you have not done.
Right. Or if you have learned your math concepts but you have not applied them in data sufficiency pattern, there's no point in taking a mock.
Absolutely. You're setting yourself up for failure and don't get that done. Like that's going to pull down your morale.
Right.
So 6 tests. Analyze properly.
Right. Give yourself, I would say, initially a week between each mock. Right. Spend that week. When the first mock, you identify where you are. You're scoring like a 640, 650. You find your weak areas. Find the kind of questions you made mistakes in. Spend a week working on those weak areas before you take the next mock.
And there's another one very common thing that we hear, right? I did everything, but I made those a lot of silly mistakes.
Yes.
So what do you have for those silly mistakes? Obviously, you didn't make them. There's something that you did which made you not make enough of them at least.
Right.
So what would you advise for someone to avoid those grand silly mistakes?
Be aware of what your silly mistakes are.
Right. Explain
and
that.
Make a conscious effort. Okay. I have written the GMAT twice. The first time I scored a 750. I'm not going to say I had a very low score, but my analysis of my first test also told me that I had tried to answer reading comprehension questions in under a minute.
Right.
And that's
half asleep.
Yes. I fell asleep around the 30th question. At least I was feeling sleepy and tired. This was back when you could not choose the order of the sections, and my verbal section was the last section. So I was really tired from doing all those quant questions. Right. So this time I told myself going into the test that I'm going to take my time. I'm not going to rush into it. I'm going to do verbal first, right? I can't get the strength done and then let's worry about the quant section.
She's like embodiment. I'm not the embodiment of quant anymore.
No, I know. Right. I was very happy with my score, obviously, when I got the 780. Right. And I found that this time I had actually, when I got the ESR and report, that I had taken the test slow. Right. I finished the first verbal section despite my tiredness with 18 minutes to spare.
Right. The first test.
Yes, the first test when I scored a V47 and a 750.
Right.
This time I finished the test with 5 minutes to spare.
Correct.
So slowing down was my necessity, right? Doing it too quickly was my silly mistake, and I made sure I corrected it. And that's what you need to do.
So keep a log of what silly mistakes you make. Are you reading the question incorrect? Are you marking it incorrect? Mark those things and have a look at the log before every mock So the chance of making the same mistake is that much lesser.
Most people do make the same kind of mistakes over and over again. If you're someone who tends to not read the questions completely, then 3 out of 10 of your mistakes would probably be because you didn't read the question completely. So correct that one thing, and that's a 30% improvement.
And reminding that before the examination, before the mock test, is your mind is going to watch out for it. You're going to be aware of it.
Exactly. You're going to consciously tell yourself, this is the kind of mistakes I make. So when that kind of a question pops up, you're going to be that much more careful about it.
You're going to be doing one more video, and that she's going to be focusing on test day tips, right? She has a 10 commandments for it, right? Watch out for it, right?
Absolutely.
From the horse's mouth, from the 780s mouth.
All right. Okay.